So today we've been asked to solve a variety of equations, and each of these equations are absolute value equations. And before we begin, the first thing I like to do is point out what an absolute value sign means. As a lot of people say to me, well, an absolute value of a number means make it positive. Well, that's not really what an absolute value means. What an absolute value means is this quantity must be 5 units from 0. That's what that means. So if you think of your number line for a second, you just picture, I'm just draw a number line up here real quickly. So if you picture a number line here, right, you've got 0. 5 is 5 units to the right, but also negative 5 is 5 units to the left. So what this really means is I need this quantity to be 5 units from 0. And because we can go to the right of 0, 5 units, or to the left of 0, 5 units, this equation will be actually broken into 2 equations. X plus 3 equals 5, and x plus 3 equals negative 5. Okay? Or a lot of teachers may write it as x plus 3 equals plus or minus 5. Okay, so now we've come down with 2 unique equations to solve, and these are very simple equations to solve. We subtract 3 from both sides here, and we subtract 3 from both sides here, and this equation, of course, will give me x equals 2, and this equation here will give me x equals negative 8. And then being a good mathematician like I try to be, I like to go back and check my work. So if I look at x equals 2, 2 plus 3 equals 5, the absolute value of 5 is 5, so I know that is a correct answer. Here, negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5, so again a correct answer. So that's pretty simple, easy introduction to absolute value equations. We'll try a second one here. Same concept. I'm saying this quantity must be 18 units from 0. Well, there are 2 ways to be 18 units from 0. I can have this quantity 18 units to the right of 0, or I can have this quantity 18 units to the left of 0. And these are 2 independent equations, and you solve them just like you would any other linear equation. So you add 8 to both sides, you get 2x equals 26, and you divide by 2 and you get x equals 13. Okay, and then over here you add 8 to both sides, you get 2x equals negative 10, and then of course you divide by 2, you get x equals negative 5. Okay, and again you want to check your work. So 2 times 13 is 26. 26 minus 8 is 18. The absolute value of 18 is 18. Okay, and negative 5. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Negative 10 minus 8 is negative 18. And the absolute value of negative 18 is positive 18. So we also know this is correct. Okay, so this seems pretty simple, pretty easy. So we're going to let you look at that for another second. And we're going to move on to something a little more fun. If you are familiar with absolute value equations, you're going to yell at your computer for a minute. Just be patient with me. I know. But let's say as a student you approach this problem here. You have the absolute value of x plus 3 equals negative 12. And you say, okay, well, we're going to break this into 2 equations. And it's going to be this quantity plus or minus 12. Okay, so x plus 3 equals 12, and x plus 3 equals negative 12. And we solve, and we say, okay, subtract 3, and you get x equals 9. And subtract 3, and you get x equals negative 15. Now, come back up here. What is 9 plus 3? Well, it's 12. What's the absolute value of 12? 12. Not negative 12. So if you check this, you get 9 plus 3 equals negative 12. 12 equals negative 12. Well, when you get this, what does this mean? It means your answer is not correct. Okay. Over here, same thing. You get negative 15 plus 3 equals negative 12. Negative 15 and 3 make negative 12. And then, of course, the absolute value of negative 12, you get 12 equals negative 12. That's not a true statement. This answer is also incorrect. What does this mean? Well, very simply, what this means is you found two solutions, neither of which are correct, and so therefore this equation will have no solution. Okay? Now, if you look at this equation, this is actually very apparent from the beginning. This is very apparent from the beginning, and the reason being is that absolute value is a distance, and distance will always be positive. And so you cannot say that this will be a negative number. Absolute value will never equal a negative number. This is impossible. And so whenever you get an absolute value quantity equals a negative number, you can very, very, very immediately just know can't work. Absolutely can't work. And so instead of working this and then finding out that these solutions are incorrect, you can very simply look and say the absolute value equals a negative number. It has to be no solution. Okay. So the last one here, we have absolute value of 4x minus 3 plus 1 equals 7. And the number one mistake that I see with an equation like this is people immediately try to break it into two equations. Before you can break this into two equations, two unique equations, you need to isolate the absolute value sign. Because right now you're saying this plus 1 is 7 from 0. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. So if I isolate the absolute value sign, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And of course 7 minus 1 will give me 6. Now this looks like previous equations. We've reduced this to a previously solved problem. And we get 4x plus 3 equals positive 6. And 4x plus 3 equals negative 6. And then we can solve these two. So you subtract 3, you get 4x equals 3. Here you get 4x equals negative 9. And you get x equals 3/4. And x equals negative 9/4. And of course, if you want to, you can go back and check these solutions and they will work. So that's how you solve an absolute value equation. And the one trick question is always to tell you that the absolute value of a quantity equals a negative number. There can be no solution for that. So you're always going to put no solution in that particular scenario. Otherwise, you're going to isolate the absolute value sign and then break it into two unique equations that are equal to the distance to the right on the number line and the distance to the left on the number line. If you have any questions about absolute value equations, please come see me.